And I think that's where we still got, cross the fingers, we still got Jaden Gibson around, big frame dude. And then, we'll go ahead and jump on because we started off with some good news this past week where it started to come in. We started to see some guys sign. The first one was a punter from Kennesaw State, and everyone said, really? This is the first guy? Hey, I would rather start off with the punter than end with the punter. So let's start off slow and gradually snowball this, and it's snowballed pretty big because we started off with Jacob Ulrich, I think is his name, right?
He's Ulrich, yeah.
Yeah, and so
Just committed too.
What's that?
Yeah. He just committed a couple of days ago. So
Yeah.
you get yourself a nice punter. You got to the problem for Jacob. Kind of feel bad for him coming in because he's got big shoes to fill. I mean, Luke
Yeah.
Elzinger, the Elzinger was a beast,
Yeah.
and so now you've got to find a way to replace that talent. That dude's a monster. So, Jacob, I'm hoping that you're prepared for all the pressure we're going to put on you to make sure that if we ever have to punt, that you punt it in a beautiful spot. Because Elzinger was the beast,
Yeah, he
out there on
was.
the field.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that point, but then also I feel like it's kind of tough for him coming in because I felt like the reaction to him signing with Oklahoma was almost like kind of disrespectful towards him without intending to be, because it was like, really, we're signing a punter, and then on top of that, a punter from Kennesaw State. What are we doing? But for one, I mean, you see what, if you go back and look at his leg back at Kennesaw State, he could flip the field, and hopefully he can do it just as good as Elzinga. But if you have a defensive minded coach and a defensive led team, last year, that's the reason why we were either close or won the 6 games that we ended up winning, was because of Elzinga flipping that field and keeping us in the game, because the defense was able to get themselves without their back on the wall, and ends up making that a lot better. So that's definitely something that we needed, the big leg, to get us back into there, and I think that was a good move. But then going forward, we had a couple of offensive linemen. I was teasing with you a little bit on X this morning, hey, we got 3, right? And then I realized, nope, the guy that I wanted already transferred, already committed anyways. But we have offensive tackle Luke Baklenko and from Stanford, who is a 6'7", 280-pound offensive lineman. And then also an offensive tackle in Derek Simmons from Western Carolina, 29th overall player in the transfer portal as it stands currently, 4th overall offensive lineman. He is 6'6", 325 pounds is what he was listed at on 3. So, I mean, this dude stands big and wide. And so, I mean, both of these guys, that feels like the Bill Bedenbaugh offensive lineman that we were used to getting back in the good old days when we had the best offensive lineman that's used to winning awards together and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, just on the offensive line front, how you feeling so far moving into the 2025 season?
Yeah, so I'm not too stressed about it. The young players, to me, Bill Beatonbow had probably his best set of classes the last couple of years when you go in and look from Daniel Akinkumi down to Isaiah Autry, Dan, Eddie Pierre, Louis. We did lose Eugene Brooks to the portal, but, it's okay. Still got Josh Sosa though. So you
Mm-hmm.
got another big center there. And then you bring in Michael Fasusi and Ryan Foget, Darius Afalava, Owen Hollenbeck, Sean Sutton, Sean Hutton. I'm sorry. You got a good foundation. That's 8 guys right there that are young, ready to play. And the main 4 that came from the 24 class, they started to get a little bit of experience. You saw Autry didn't get some run out there at tackle. So he's going to be about ready. But then you still got your 23 guys. You still got Logan Howland. You still got Jacob Sexton. You still got Jake Taylor. Those 3, that's your foundational pieces right there at the tackle position. And when they were all healthy, they played good. Both Jakes played really good when they were healthy. The problem was they couldn't stay healthy the entire season. And so you need them to go ahead and get healthy, and I think that you'll be fine there. Heath Ozida is still there, and I love what Heath was putting together this year. You still got Fabichi Wewu, and then you bring in Baklinko as well as Derek Simmons. That gives you more of a veteran piece to go with the young guys. And so they'll be there to help push the line. But when you look at the 15 guys, the 3 deep, which you should always look at your 3 deep when it comes to offensive linemen, because knock on wood, unfortunately, somebody's going to go down. Still got Troy Everett and Branson Hickman has still got 1 more year eligibility. So you got those 2 for 1 more year with Josh Iasosa right behind them to be able to take over that, or Owen Hollenbeck taking over at center. So we've actually got something that we were hoping for we've got more veterans, people with snaps, than we have guys that have never played a snap at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
If we had that past season, things would have looked differently because we end up having to rely on a lot of young players that hadn't played. I mean, think about it this way. Troy Everett, he was the starting center going into spring. He gets hurt. So you go hunt down and get Branson Hickman, who comes in. He unfortunately also gets hurt right before the season, but he gets to play a little bit. But a minute that Troy Everett got back on the field, that offensive line looked a heck of a lot better. Looked completely different because Troy Everett is a really good center. So he gets to take over that spot, gets everybody going. We just got to make sure everything around it gets better. And I think that we did with adding those two tackles. And I think that's probably it. If there's an elite player that populates that picks up the phone and says, "Hey, I want to come to Oklahoma," we'll probably take that phone call. But for the most part, I think the line is now solid because we've grown, and that's what's important.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the size alone tells you something, and then on top of that, just seeing who was going after these two guys, I feel like both these offensive linemen are they were very much wanted by a lot of big teams. Especially in the Power Four when you start to look at those teams that really matter. We'll probably talk about it here just a second, just because we get into the wide receiver corps that we added to. Got 2 wide receivers so far. I think we'd like to add maybe 2 more. Is what I'm hearing. Maybe at least 1 or maybe 2 more. And so far we got Keontez Lewis from Southern Illinois. Started his career off at Wisconsin and moved down, but then now coming back into the D1 college football and starting it off pretty well by going to Oklahoma. At least for him, it's a good move. Overall, though, throughout his career, in all 3 seasons he's played, which I believe his second year didn't hardly play at all, but then this last season had a really good season. Overall, he's averaging close to 16 yards per reception. So it's a dude that, I mean, he's able to get the ball, and when he does, he's able to get it downfield. I'll take that all day. And then you look over at Giovanni Gibson, which I kind of raised this as soon as I saw it, and then I saw Parker Thuney then said the same thing. What are we going to do about the 2 J.A. Gibsons? Like, do you put J-A-V or J-A-Y on one? Like, how's this going to work out now? But you get Giovanni Gibson from Arkansas Pine Bluff. He was a 38th ranked wide receiver portal, according to On3, I believe it was, that I pulled that off of, out of 72 plus, because there's some that aren't quite listed yet. But he's ranked up there in the wide receivers, which is something that isn't really heard of. You're not really mentioned, is that, hey, he's a ranked dude. He was a guy that other teams wanted. And according to On3, he even ranked ahead of Donovan McCulley, who was one that we were hopeful to get, and ranked right up there with Naziah Hunter and Reggie Virgil. So, I mean, with the overall rankings that they're doing, or the ratings, I should say, that they're giving these kids, they're saying that he's, from the scouting perspective, just as good as some of these other guys that we were super excited to get. Yet the fan base, at least on social media, seems to be saying, why are we going after these guys that are from FCS schools, or even from these Group of 5 schools that we don't care about? And I think that's the wrong mentality, rather than looking at the scouting report. Because if you watch some of the tape on the guys that we picked up, I think it tells you quite a bit.
Yeah, and the one thing that I saw it on X, and I talked to actually Colin Kennedy last night on the show. We talked a little bit through this, and one thing that is very much apparent when it comes to what coaches actually look for, a lot of them believe that if you're able to produce at the lower level, that's more likely to translate up than for a guy that has spent the last 2 to 3 years not producing at the P4 level to be able to all of a sudden start producing. And that's the thing to kind of look at. I understand if it's younger players, because you're like, okay, they just need a little bit more development. You can make that work out. But if you got some guys that are older and they're in the portal and they ain't played for 3, 4 years, there's probably a reason why. And that usual reason isn't a good thing in most capacity. Now, some situations are different. Could be injuries on a regular basis, but that's also something to consider. Perfect example with Oklahoma, with us, we moved a lot of the players that left us in the portal were guys that had spent a lot of time injured in some capacity of their career. Right? JJ Hester, for the most part, was hurt the first couple of years he was here when he transferred from Missouri. Finally, was able to really break out this past year, and I think he'll do well at Kentucky, but he spent time injured. Brennan Thompson spent some time injured, often on the injured list. Farouk played, 2 games, and he was hurt. Same thing. Nick Anderson did not play. And, as you just continue to go down the list of players, injuries have been factors. And so that happens with a lot of players. So the question is, if they're healthy, what they're going to be able to do. The guys that we're bringing in with the Keontae Lewis as well as Giovanni Gibson is they're bringing in production at a level of football that's above high school. Because all these dudes kill it in high school. But were they able to do it at the next level? And you see translations. Let me give you a perfect example. Twofold. One, Arkansas Pine Bluff. We have experience bringing a wide receiver in to Oklahoma from Arkansas Pine Bluff. A lot of y'all love him as Sooner fans. He's one of your favorite guys. Mark Bradley. He was really good. Now,
Yeah.
war number one, it's a fantastic wide receiver. We enjoyed watching him play, right? He's from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, played at Arkansas Pine Bluff, transferred into Oklahoma. Rest is history. Another one that you could think of. Over at Arkansas, the number one wide receiver in yards in the SEC came from Texas A&M Commerce. Andrew Armstrong. He's lighting up there at Arkansas right now. So this isn't a very uncommon thing. The wide receiver position is probably the one that you can get a dude from FCS and come up here and he could dominate. It's all about is he fast? Can he catch? And can he get off the line? And a lot of these dudes typically can. Some of them, like you said, in some ways, some dudes probably needed to go somewhere to get their grades together, some try to get their life together, and now they're at a point where they're ready to ball. I can guarantee, though, with those two, adding them into this room with the young guys, it's a good mix because think Gibson has 2 years left, but Lewis only has one.
Yeah.
Which is perfect because it doesn't stifle the development in the room of wide receivers you currently have. You're going to be able to still get Zion Kearney going. You're still going to be able to get Zion Raggins or KJ Daniels, but get all those young guys going. Ivan Carrion's going to be able to get himself going. You're still going to be able to work with those young guys. And then Elijah Thomas as well as Manny Choice comes in. You're not replacing too many guys with players that's going to take every single snap. Those young guys are going to get an opportunity to play. And then when they get to play, and they're a lot more comfortable because the veterans are taking a lot more attention, that's when you're going to see them be able to pop and be ready for the next season.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of size too, you got Giovanni Gibson coming in at 6'2", 205 pounds. I mean, he may not be the tallest receiver out there where we were going after some guys that are like 6'4". I think Jaden Gibson's like 6'5", isn't he? So we still got some height though. 6'2" is a good height for receiver, but 205, I like that. I like that a lot, and that's something that I love to see from him. He's one of those guys too. If you go back and look at his tape for Giovanni Gibson, that he's just really good route running, and he honestly reminds me quite a bit. I mean, I don't like to throw comparisons out there because sometimes you don't live up to it. I'm not saying he's as good or anything, but CeeDee Lamb. That's what I see a lot of in him. Good route running, get yourself open, and you know what? The hardest man to catch is the open man. And that's the hardest one. It's not the fastest guy. It's the guy that can get open. And that's what we saw from CeeDee Lamb. He's very shifty. Kind of like the CeeDee Lamb that we saw, and his progression and how he got bigger. And he wasn't the fastest dude on the field, but he didn't have to be. And so that's what I like a lot from him. Plus, he's got that strength, that size to be able to get out there. Gabe did a really good job on Gabe Eicher did a really good job on In Between the Weeds. And kind of talking about showing some of his where the quarterback starts to run, and what does he do? He turns around and tries to find a block and throws all 205 pounds into a big block, and he's really good at that. So that's what I love to see coming for a guy like that. And then Keontae Lewis, 6'2" again, but only 190, not that much lighter, but still 190. He reminds me a little bit more. It feels like we brought him in because we lost guys like maybe Andrel Anthony or I would probably compare it more to the loss of Jaleel Farouk, where, not necessarily your biggest dudes, but they're shifty, they're speedy, and you can get them on the outside and match up. And so, of course, 6'2", that's not a bad height to have, especially if you got a little bit of hops to be able to go up for those 50-50 balls. So that's something, man, I'm excited because I'm looking back at some of these guys' tapes and seeing what they're capable of. Now, does that translate? That's something that that you really just have to rely on the coaching staff to be able to kind of coach them up and get them ready for it. And I think a lot of people they want to look at where they came from rather than looking back and what they did. And I think that's pretty important looking forward.
No, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Hey, Sooner fans, did you enjoy this video? Well, go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. What are you doing if you've made it this far and haven't already? You should be able to find that subscribe button over here. And then if you want to see full episodes, we've got those up here and clips right down here. So go check that out. But we thank you all so much for all the love, all the support. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.